Shalom, Rabbi Yitzhak Levi, unveiling Torah truth on a weekly basis. Todah. Thank you for allowing me to your homes. And if you have your Bibles and your notebooks, let's study Torah together. This week's Torah portion is called Shmot. Unlike the English Bibles that begin with the book of Exodus, the Torah calls it the book of names, Shmot. And it opens up with the names of the tribes. In Shmot, chapter 3 and verse 13, it was the custom of the day that people always inquired of the name of the person they were going to do business with. And so the first thing they wanted to know from Moshe and Moses was, what is the name of your God that you speak of? And Moshe, of course, says his name is Ehyeh. Ehyeh is one of the names of God, but unlike any other name, it is not the kind of one of the 7 holy divine names of God, each describing a divine activity that goes beyond the norm, a divine intervention with man, its capacity. What is this? Each one of those names of God describes how is God going to intertwine or intervene in man's life. For instance, one of the names of God is a ruler. One is God is the judge. The other one is God is the provider. And the other one is the God is a savior, and so forth and so on. While Ehyeh is like no other, it describes God as a non-created. In other words, this particular God, Ehyeh, has no beginning and has no end. He always is. He always is. In Isaiah 56:5, powerful statement, I will give them an everlasting name that will endure forever. It has never happened since the beginning of time. But it will take place when Yeshua comes and establishes his kingdom here on earth for 1,000 years. And those who will be invited into his earthly kingdom will be invited by name. The kind of a name that will endure forever. Le'olam. Like the Israelites in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, who multiplied and prospered despite their affliction and persecutions, and were led to the promised land by Moshe. Moshe is derivative also to Messiah. So they both have much in common. Both are viewed as saviors. The prophet Isaiah promises that the nation of Israel will also come back from her exile in triumph. Okay, again, that has not taken place yet. So, Isaiah 27 and verse 6. In days to come shall Yaakov, Jacob, take root. Israel, that's the other name of Yaakov, the changed name, shall blossom and bud, and will fill the face of the world with fruit. That's Isaiah 27:6. Now, what does that bring to mind? Remember when there was 12 staves put in the Mishkan for God to choose which of the 12 tribes he chooses to be the priest of Israel, the spokesman for God on earth. It was Aaron's staff, Aaron's rod that fulfilled all these 3 things. It budded, and it gave leaves, and it gave fruit. That is so powerful. Notice that both names of Yaakov, Jacob, are used here. Jacob, the earthly and the carnal name given by his parents. He fathered the natural nation that was named after the divine name. The nation is not called the nation of Yaakov. It is called the nation of his divine given name, Israel, Sarel, Prince of God or Prince with God. It is the name his earthly father gave him, which is Yaakov. And based on that name, it reveals much truth about Yaakov being the heel grabber. He starts at the very bottom. He doesn't get any lower than the heel. It is where the heel meets earth. While Sarel, Prince of God, is one that has the crown, the princely crown. It is the highest or the furthest from the earth is the crown over the head, and that speaks of his divinity. It is his promotion as the Sarel, as the Prince of God. It is Yaakov that takes root, right? Every tree has to have his roots in the ground. And the fruit of the tree is not in the ground, but at the very top branches. So it takes root, but Israel actually is the one that blossoms, not Yaakov, but Israel, bearing fruit for the benefit of the entire world. And how does he do that? By promoting and encouraging people to study Torah. Only the knowledge of Torah and the understanding of the Torah will get men closer to God. When we first encounter God, we all start as Yaakov, as Jacob. We have to plant ourselves in the ground, in the knowledge of Torah. In our spiritual state, through obedience to God's laws, we are being transformed into Yashar El. That means we're right with God. Right with God, Yashar. So Israel, when you look at the spelling in the Hebrew, it has several interpretations. One is Sarel and one is Yashar El. That means right with God. The first 50 chapters of Bereshit, Genesis, covers a lot of information from the first day of creation to the passing away of the patriarchs, Yosef, and that whole generation is gone. Excuse me. While the majority of the information in Bereshit deals with Yaakov and his family, we will find out that the next 4 books of the Torah deal with Moshe, Moses. If we read in Exodus or Shmot chapter 1 verse 1 till 2, although God had already counted Israel in their lifetime, he also counted them at the time of their death, to express his love for them. For they are like the invisible stars during the day, which represents their death, and bringing them by night to show all their light and life. God brings them by number and by name. Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 26. He takes out their hosts by number. He calls them each by name. Yes, if we believe the Tanakh and the time of Yom Kippur Atonement Day, where we fast for 25 hours. And it is the reckoning time between man and God, of which the books are open, and also the book of life. And those that are inscribed in the book of life are guaranteed to spend eternity with God. Joseph, along with the entire generation, had all passed away. In the book of Shemot, chapter 1 and verse 8, and a new king arose over Egypt, who did not know of Joseph. Should we understand this as did not know, never heard of Joseph? Or maybe you should say, who did not want to know Joseph? After all, it was Joseph, who made Egypt into a superpower with his God-given wisdom. Man is so far removed from the understanding of what God is. We have no clue. We always try to fashion him by our own understanding. All the words we use to describe God are borrowed words. It is the best we can do because we really don't have the capacity of His majesty and greatness. In chapter 2 of Bereshit, it is the first time that God introduces Himself as the Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh, what we call the Tetragrammaton. It is forbidden to mention. It is forbidden to use the name of the Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh. The Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh in its simplistic form is the abbreviation of God's 72-letter name, which is permitted only once a year in only one place, and that is the Holy of Holies, and by only one person, and that is only the high priest. Any other time, in any other place, would be immediately burned to death. Immediately. In the commands, the 10 commands God gave, He said, "Thou shalt not use the name of the Lord thy God in vain." So many people assume that they know it. They will come and say, "Well, God spoke to me. Well, God revealed Himself to me. Well, God told me." Well, if you want to believe that, that's fine. But the scripture tells us that in the end days, many messiahs, many saviors will come. And Deuteronomy tells us to beware of those people and not to follow them. If God says not to use His name, first of all, we don't know His name. So for people to claim, well, His name is Yahweh, well, His name is Jehovah, well, His name is Yehovah, whatever the case may be, I fear God. And even if I knew how to pronounce it, I wouldn't, because God says not to. Only one man, in one place, one time a year. So, Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh, the Tetragrammaton, is a forbidden name even for those who think they might know the 72 letters. And how do I get to 72? Well, there's 70 in the Sanhedrin court. God told Moshe to assemble judges, and He did 70 souls, 70 Levites who are making the Sanhedrin court of Israel. That's the supreme court of Israel. And there was a president over them, which makes it 71. And over the president is God, and His name is 72 letters. So people for thousands of years have attempted to pronounce those letters, claiming that they are the only ones that God has revealed. But we know from Torah that that name was passed from high priest to high priest. So if you look at those Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh, I do not have a board here to show you, but I will attempt my best. If you know any Hebrew at all, you can follow me with the Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh. the 4 letters that we find in the Torah. If you remove the yod, that's the smallest little, what do you call in English, jot, but jot means nothing in Hebrew, so it's yod. Yod means hand. If you remove the hand, what you have is hoveh, present. Present. If you remove the middle letter vav and replace it with a small yod, you have hoveh. So we have hoveh, haya, and ihyeh. All these 3 descriptions of God tells you who He is. And that, if you break it down by numeric value, you will find that God says, Ehyeh asher ehyeh, I will be that which I will be, whatever I choose to be, for that day, for that moment, for that job. Ehyeh asher ehyeh means was, is, and will be. As God describes Himself to Moshe in Shmot chapter 3 and verse 14. I will be what I will be. Say to Israel, I will be, sent me. What kind of name is that? What does that mean, I will be? In simple words, it means I am not from your world. I am unique, and there is nothing in heaven or earth that can compare to me. I am whatever I choose to be. Does that mean God has no feelings, no emotions? If we take the verse that says, for God so loved the world, He gave His only Son. Love. Wow. So love encompasses all these feelings of caring, of compassion, and mercy. Love. Love conquers the world. And if God loved the world so much, we have to agree that He has all these feelings for us. And He's compassionate towards us. That would portray feelings, compassion, emotions. How about when He says to ask of Him to supply our needs, to heal our bodies? Does that not portray feelings, emotions, trust in God that He does understand our needs? And in His design, would that not tell us that all these feelings and emotions we have actually come from Him? He not only made us and created us in His image and likeness, but those emotions and those feelings we have, they did not come from themselves, not from some kind of a explosion. No, these are part of God's attributes. He wants us to be the sons of God. And as the psalm says, you are God's. God is saying, the only thing you should know about me is that I have always existed. And everything that is exists because of me. I am the author and the finisher of everything. In Shmot chapter 3 verse 11 and 12 gives us the clue of the dialogue between Moshe and God. Ehyeh means I will always be with Israel in times of gladness and in times of conflict. In Shmot chapter 3 verse 14, Moshe is asking God, how can I do this alone? God says, you will not be alone. I will be there with you. But I'm raising you, I'm elevating you in the place of a Messiah. You as a man. And I will work through you. Ehyeh asher ehyeh. means I am like nothing you can compare to. So don't use your imagination to form me into different animals and different birds and different sea creatures. I will always be with you. You may not see me. You may not even hear me, but I am with you and I always know your needs. Like Daniel in the lion's den, and like the 3 Hebrews in the fiery pit. And I know it sounds weird, and many of the Jewish people look down upon me when I say yes, even in the Holocaust, God was with them and He knew their needs. But they have removed themselves so far away from God that He did not recognize them. He did not recognize them. But even in that time, when they called on God, He responded and He sent saviors. In this case, it was the Americans who saved much of the Jewish survivors. Shemot chapter 3 and verse 13 and 14. The reason for Yeshua repeating the name of Ehyeh 3 times. In chapter 3 and verse 13 and 14. You read it over there, and if you have the Hebrew portion, look at it, and you will see in verse 14, God repeats His name 3 times. I believe, well, isn't it suffice that God said to Moshe 1 time, what is He hard of hearing? Why would He have to repeat it 3 times? I believe that since God made a covenant with the patriarchs and there was only 3 of them, that God said, in other words, to Moshe, yes, I am Ehyeh, which was with Abraham, and I am Ehyeh, which was with Yitzchak, with Isaac, and yes, I am the Ehyeh, which was with Jacob, Yaakov. Yosef died, Israel multiplied in Egypt, a new king arose. He was threatened by their growing numbers. Paro in Hebrew, or Pharaoh, called himself Ra. Ra is the sun god. The sun god rules in the heavens. But unfortunately, and very, very sad, the sun god still rules. People still worship the sun. A total opposition from what God says. God commanded us to worship Him, the Creator, and not the created. And the sun is a created being, created on the 4th day. So for people who are not familiar with the Torah and its teachings, like Pharaoh, he could get away with it by telling the world, I am the sun god. I am Ra. However, the word Ra in Hebrew means evil. Evil. So without him knowing, he called himself exactly what he was. He was an evil Pharaoh who did not know or did not want to know Joseph. So he went to 2 Hebrew women, and their name was Shifra and Puah. Shifra means shofar, the blowing of the shofar. And Puah from Hebrew is mouth. That was their name. And he told them, listen, you will do well if you take my command. And every baby boy, you kill it. Every baby girl, You deliver. That's what their job was, to deliver. Well, obviously, they could not go against God. They were Hebrew women, and they feared God. And so they allowed the baby boys with the baby girls to live. And for that, in verse 21, God blesses them with good husbands and with homes, which basically what he's telling us, that God provided for them to have their own families in their own homes. Now remember, rain was scarce in Egypt, and therefore, believe it or not, water became one of the gods of Egypt. So the Nile River is definitely the God who provides for man and for beast. It was the God, the primary God that the Egyptians worshipped in an attempt to control the growth of Israel and use them as free labor. The evil Pharaoh decreed that all newborn male children to be drowned in the Nile. Now, what does that mean? You remember the stories of Molech? Compare them with the suicide bombers of this century, sending their firstborn to die for their cause. Nothing much has changed. Those pagans have always believed in sacrificing their firstborn. So now what he's doing, Pharaoh, he's sacrificing the Hebrew baby boys into their God, the Nile God. So, the Nile is the only functioning God of the Egyptian gods, and the only one who truly gives life. All the other gods do not give life. It is their imagination. So, if we look at the Holocaust of the Hebrew people, we find that that was the first Holocaust, is throwing the Hebrew baby boys to the Nile. And of course, we have another Holocaust, which took 6 million of our people. And we have one more Holocaust coming up. So, we do not want to fall in the number of those who will perish in the next Holocaust. And the best way to assure that is to study God's Torah. It is His love letters for us. We will do good for ourselves and our families if we hang on and hold on to Yeshua. Until next time, Shalom, Shalom.